put the pulley on the crankshaft now, there's one thing to remember. Inside here there's an O-ring, a seal, to stop the oil travelling down the taper, and we're going to put that in there so you can see that O-ring's in there. We're going to put a little bit of lubricant just to make it go over the edges easily. We didn't lubricate the taper. I just lubricated the seal, because if you lubricate the taper, sometimes it'll make it go on further than you want it to. So keep the taper unlubricated, but lubricate the O-ring. It's going to take a little bit of a tap to put it on, because that's the way it is. Just to get that O-ring over it, that's all that's about. Then we're going to take the nut, the crankshaft nut, and we're going to put that on, and we're going to have to get our special tool out now to tighten that up. I'll show you that tool here in a minute. So I'm going to tighten up this front nut here and just give that a good tighten. And then I'm going to get the pulley, I'm going to get the belt pulley, put it on, and I have to align the locking plate with the nut. So I have to go on more to get that plate on. But this plate goes inside the pulley, and I'll show you that when we get to that part. So I've taken the necessary steps to keep tightening this until this locking plate will go in the teeth of the nut. So that's you can see that slides on easily. It's a bit of a fiddle, you have to keep. So the next thing we're going to put on is the harmonic balancer. It's pretty straightforward. We just go like so. That's because our assistant cleaned the holes out for us nicely. And then we got the pulley, and we'd lined up our holes previously for the cutouts, so that's on. And then we're just going to put the bolts in, like so. So we're going to tighten them up. You see the pulley going on. Just cross in again. Okay, so we're putting the inlet manifold on. What I do is, where the water holes are, is I always put a bit of sealant there just to make sure the water stays in there, because you wouldn't want the water travelling to your inlet ports. So I always put a little bit of that on there. And then we're going to drop this down nice and even. And then you've got a particular washer for the inlet manifold. It's got a bevel on it, if you want. Okay, so we're going to start in the middle of each one of these manifolds. As I pointed out in the beginning, you know, we put the sealant around those water openings, so I'm going to start in the middle, pull them down. So they're all tight now. So we go to the outside. Bolts. And that down nice and square. You can see the two clips we've got on here. Should be a third one in there, and Steve will take care of that along the way. So we've got a couple here. And I'll have to go to a wrench, a different wrench.
Here we go.
Okay, so we're going to fit the rocker cover now. We're using the rubber, I guess, aftermarket gaskets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a bit of the black, ultra black in there to give me some, just to keep it in. I'm not trying to help it seal, but I need to be able to keep the gasket from falling out when I put it on. So I'm going to put about 4 places. Like so. Get rid of that nasty stuff. And I'm going to put the gasket in there, like so. There we go. I'm going to flip that over, push it down. Then I'm going to take the rubbers and I'm going to put them in the hole. You see the rubbers there? That one. Then we're going to take the washers, put those in. And we're going to go over here.
The lower corner doesn't quite look like it. There you go.
That's right, we need to make sure all of that. I'm keeping my fingers underneath it to make sure we get it. I'm going to get my nuts. Centralise that.
The Rolls Royce goes up in case anybody wondered. If it went the other way, you wouldn't be able to read it.
Is that right?
That's right.
Gotcha. So somebody's taken, oh, I've got it. Thought somebody had stolen my socket. So we pull down the centre first, and we're watching the rubber. We don't want to, everything's rubber, so we don't want to make it come flying out of there. We want it to be tight enough to stay on there without spoiling it. So we're going to pull that down. Of course, you're on rubber. On that thing, we'll check our gasket. Everything looks good. So that's that. We've got the rockers on. Okay, so we're going to put the oil plugs in. The end of the drillings there, there's a couple of plugs for the oil gallery.
One of them's brass and one of them's CAD plated. We picked two different, and they're different thread sizes.
I'm going to push this one, put this one in, finish it off. That one, need a different size wrench for that one.
Oh, I like your one.
So we'll tighten this one up. Okay, so that's...
Okay, I'm going to put the thermostat in. You can see there's a little pin in there, and the edge of the thermostat is going to go over. Okay, you can see this little slot there. I showed you the pin, and that sets in there and hits that little slot there, just like that. And that one edge isn't quite going down right, so I'm going to just tap it a little bit. tap it in place. That's a new one. I got that one from Albers. We'll need a gasket, and then that thing sits on top there with four bolts, and they'll have standard washers on them. Okay, let me tilt the camera up there a little bit. Ralph's not here today, so I'm finishing this engine off. You can see I put some of that black sealant on the back there of that gasket, put it over the top of the thermostat. I put a little goop on that side too, and then there's a standard washer and a T-headed bolt. And we'll get all of those started and get them tightened down. Okay, so I went ahead and I tightened those down, and you don't want to over torque those. You know, that's funny, I call them a 7/16 head, and Ralph calls them a quarter bolt because I'm talking about the head and he's talking about the shaft. And I measured all of mine from the end. When you look at the dimension in the booklet, it'll be from the bottom of the head to the end of the shaft on the bolt when you look up a standard bolt to see how long it is. Okay, next I'm going to put on the water pump here, and you have to put these brackets on here. Not this one, that goes on later, but the thing I wanted to show you is those are different size bolts. You got 1/2 inch heads, you got 7/16 inch heads, you got 1 over 3 inches. This one's a little longer than the one over here, which are both 1/2 inch heads, and then the rest of them are 7/16. Half of them are T-heads. Some of them are Newton U, and these have a specialty slot type of deal in the side, and they hold the pulley on. We'll get to that in a minute. This came from replacement parts, and they send this extra thick gasket, and just as a heads up, if you use the Rolls-Royce thinner gasket, this water pump will rub on the frame, so you have to use the gasket they send you, and I think in the future that may be a problem for somebody if they change one of these out or rebuild them. But anyway, I'm going to give this replacement parts one a chance and see what she does. These aftermarket vendors are getting good at supporting the Rolls-Royce, and I think we need to support them. Okay, the first thing we're going to do here is I put gasket seal on there, and of course you got to get the holes lined up because they're of different sizes, and I put that sealant on there to hold that gasket in place. It's a cork gasket. You could damage it quite easily, and then you got to get your holes on your lined up with your big holes there, and that thing goes like that. And I'm going to try to get one of these started. Mostly to hold it on there. Alright. Then I'm going to put my long one in there, and it goes all the way deep back in there like that. The wrench here. Alright, got that one started. And I'm going to go ahead and get the smaller ones in here. Okay, I've got all those bolts started now, and I'm going to go around and tighten that one down to the opposite side. And keep going around. And I'm doing the smaller ones first, inside to out. And I need to get this top one going inside to out. It's a 1/2 inch head. You'll notice I put these brackets on here. I'll take this one out later so I can adjust. That's where the generator goes. And then we'll get these two. And I'm going to come back since that's a cork. Yeah, I'll use that wrench on. All right, got her all tightened up. Okay, next I put my gasket on here and some sealant already and the bolts in it. But this is your water feet. Okay, so I'll tighten those two on up. There we go. And there we go. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here is I've got my gasket, and that's one of the same kind of gaskets we used on the plate on the back. They don't need any sealant on them, but that goes around and it goes right in here. I'll be careful with my gasket. And by the way, these get a standard washer and they're a T-headed bolt. It's important to get all the right bolts in the right places. I'm making sure my gasket is still in place. Okay, so far so good. A little wiggling and we got them all started. Okay, you can see in here, this was a machine fit on back. That's why you get the thin. And I'm going to go ahead and those are 1/2 inch, so they're a little bigger than the 7/16. So anyway, we got that tightened down on there. When you put this thing back down, which I made another video down, you want it to be able to be read when you're standing on this side in this pop up here, and it should pop up because there should be compression on it. You should have to push it down good to get it shut, but that's all in place where it needs to go. Okay, the next thing I'm going to put in is the sensor. It's a temperature sensor, and I put a little bit of goop on the end of it, gasket sealer, and I'm going to screw that on in there, and that's a 5/8. And I'm going to go ahead and give that a good tightening. That actually has a seal at the end of it that it goes in and seals on, but I put a little bit of gasket sealer on it anyway. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is put in the where you screw the water pipe on, but that gets an aluminum washer on it, and then it gets screwed in that hole there. A lot of threads on one of those things. All right, and then that's a big 1 1/8. So I want to give that a good tighten. Like that. Okay, I hope you can see this down here, but I'm putting the oil sensor in right now. It goes like that with the connection up. I've got gasket sealer on here, as you can see, and I've got one screw, and that kind of goes in there like that. And that one screw has to get started. Like that. Then I'll put the rest of them in. Okay, well you can see there I got the screws in, all of them but one. This has a rather thin washer on it, small washer, and it is a thick head screw. So I'm going to go ahead and get that one started, and then we'll do the cross pattern to tighten them down. Okay, I did put plenty. I'm going to wipe a little of that squirted out, but I put plenty of sealant on those. Those tend to leak. And what the problem is they're, I think, made out of a softer material. I think it's aluminum, but that housing there. But as you draw these screws in, it gets pulled in a little bit. So you got to take it on your vise and use a brass hammer, and you got to straighten it back out till you get a good straight seal across it. And then with the extra form of gasket sealant, it seals it up nicely. Need to put the drain plug in. I can see that's... Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aluminum washer and the plug in the manifold. It goes right there. I haven't done it yet. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. Okay, I put on the air conditioning bracket. I hope you can see it. There's 3 bolts there, kind of one back behind the water outlet. But I put that on there. I'm going to put a circular compressor. I believe the ones that are a York compressor, the old style that go thump, 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 they got a couple of extra brackets that come on here. But I'm going to use a circular compressor, so I'm going to use that bracket and call it just like that.